R.J. Barrett will reportedly meet with the Knicks next week. Knicks have the #3 pick. They're rumored to be trading that pick in a package for a superstar. Nick, what should the Knicks do here?
If they can get Anthony Davis for R.J. Barrett and players, then obviously you do it.
Yes.
That trade makes sense. The rumored trade that they might trade 3 for the Hawks' 8th and 10th picks, that doesn't make as much sense to me unless the Knicks believe there's a 2-player draft, Zion and Ja, and after that it's a bit of a crapshoot, so just compile picks. I would imagine RJ is going to be drafted by the Knicks on June 26th. I'm sorry, on June 20th. Now, whether or not he ever plays for the Knicks will be determined by the Anthony Davis trade if that happens.
I met with the Knicks last week. They're very excited to sit down and meet with RJ. Also, going into the draft, they have the top 3 players in this draft, Nick. All of them have expressed a great deal of interest. All of them wanted to play in New York.
Yeah.
Ja was disappointed. He wanted to play in New York, and we saw Zion, his disappointment when on the lottery night. So, yes, he is high on their board. It lets you know that in the workout, everything didn't. If they trade out of the 3 spot and move back for Atlanta and get those 2 spots, it lets you know what Nick Wright just confirmed, that it's a 2-player draft.
All right, moving on. According to reports, Kawhi Leonard is being slowed down by a knee issue, which stems from him overcompensating for a quad injury. The same right quad injury that forced him to miss all but 9 games last year in San Antonio. So, CC, even though he's not 100% healthy, does Toronto need maybe more from Kawhi moving forward?
Well, be more efficient at what he's doing. He's not going to be healthier. I think that's one of the disappointing things about Kawhi in his camp. They thought after they closed out Milwaukee, he'd have a few extra days of rest and he'd be healthier coming into this finals than he's been the last couple of weeks. He hadn't been. He's been hampered. The knee is more of an issue than the right quad. And even though it is the same quad that he had an issue with in San Antonio, it's not the same injury. I did get a clarification from his team on that last week.
Well, and you mentioned last week before the finals that Kawhi had been dealing with some tendonitis. That was the main thing that was hampering him in these playoffs, and they hoped he would be healthy going into the NBA Finals. As you can see in these highlights, by the way, the injury is not hurting his power. Watch him just bully Klay Thompson there. Okay, you can just fall down.
Yes.
I think he broke Kevon Looney's collarbone.
Oh, yeah, Kevon Looney ran into him
and broke his collarbone. Now not going to play again. Where it's hurting Kawhi is on his jump shot. He's shooting 28% from 3 over his last 11 games after shooting 50% from 3 in the first 9 games of the playoffs. The efficiency is where these injuries are slowing him down.
All right, finally, with all the injury talk surrounding Golden State, Steph Curry has quietly led this team through the start of this series. As the Warriors head back to Oracle for Game 3, Steph is the heavy betting favorite to win MVP, with Kawhi and Draymond having the next best odds. Nick, has Curry been the most valuable player through 2 games?
It's very close. I feel like through 2 games, Draymond was the most valuable player in their win. Steph was the best player in Game 1, but they lost. So how do you associate value with a game they lost, right? So Draymond had triple-double in the game they lost, but it was a pretty hollow triple-double. And if you watch it, he didn't have the impact he typically has on both ends of the court. I also think that for Steph, Game 2, the game they won, man, I know we're going to talk about Iggy. We've talked about Iggy and helping Steph's legacy and things like that. The idea that how results-oriented we are in these discussions. Steph in the 4th quarter of their win, his zeros across the board, didn't even attempt a shot, and had just a bonehead technical foul. A technical foul that is indefensible for any player, much less a player that has to know better. A player who's been kicked out of a finals game before for throwing his mouthpiece and hitting a fan. Like that. So because they won, we don't really care that Steph had zeros across the board and 0 field goal attempts, which seems incomprehensible in the 4th quarter of Game 2. To me, if it ended today, if it's like, hey, pick your MVP, I would pick Draymond. I think Draymond has been the most consistent Warrior, and I think Draymond in Game 2 was the most valuable Warrior. Go ahead.
There's just something funny to the fact that Steph would play in an NBA Finals, and Iggy would win an MVP, and Dre would win an MVP, and one of the greatest shooters to ever play the game wouldn't win an MVP in the Finals if that were the case. But I guess he's got to do more.
I mean, there's tremendous irony to it. right now, to me, Draymond has had a bigger impact because what he's done on the defensive end. You just talked about it. Kawhi, part of the reason why are the bodies and everything that they're throwing, and we need to be able to give them some type of credit for that. When Steph didn't win it in their first final, Iggy, you're not giving it to Iggy because he's scoring the basketball. You're giving it to him because on both ends of the court, you felt like he was the best player. It's really hard after 2 games, especially when there's no advantage. If the Warriors were up 2-0, then we could make a case for, oh, man, this guy. Listen, this is wide open. But the reason why the percentages are higher for Steph is because he's the only offensive player that they have.
Right.
Clay is hurt. They know that. That's baked in there. So Clay might not play game 3, so that eliminates him. Kevin Durant's already going to miss 3 games. That eliminates him. Who else is available? They can't give it to Steve Kerr.
And so there is an element of, for these odds, it's not just what they've done, but a prognostication on what they will do moving forward. By the way, it's 1-1 because of the order. You talk about this all the time. What if the games were flipped? What if Golden State won game 1 and Toronto won game 2? Then would we be saying Kawhi should be the favorite right now? Because Kawhi, even though he hasn't been efficient, he's still averaging 29 points per game in this series. He has still matched Steph's offense while bringing to the table better defense. What's unfortunate for Steph is none of this is a legacy discussion. If he had just won the Finals MVP, he probably should have in 2015. And I think the audience needs a reminder because it wasn't well reported on in the moment. It's only been well reported on the years since. What happened in that 2015 Finals? The year he won league MVP, averaged more points per game in the Finals than the regular season and didn't win it. 11 ballots are cast for Finals MVP. They come in. It was 4 for LeBron, 4 for Iggy, 3 for Steph. And they can't have a co-finals MVP.
And the NBA, a number of years ago, they said they're not going to have a loser be named MVP.
And that's not a rule, but it's essentially become a rule. Because if it was ever going to happen, LeBron averaged 36, 13, and 9 that year.
Yeah, shooting what from the field?
Well, that year he didn't. He shot 58% the year before in the finals. That year he had a lower percentage because he was the offense unto himself. But he was 36, 13, 9. So it was 4, 4, 3. And so what's been reported is that the 7 people that voted for Warriors came together and said, guys, we can't have co-MVPs.
Right.
We all obviously think it should go to someone on the winning team. Who's it going to go to? Right. And since Iggy had a 4-3 vote edge, they said, okay, we'll all vote for Iggy. So in the final balloting...
I didn't know that.
Right. So the final balloting shows Iggy 7, LeBron 4, Steph 0. But the real balloting was 4, 4, 3. So if one person on that initial ballot, if you will, had gone Steph instead of Iggy or had gone Steph instead of LeBron, then Steph has that first Finals MVP, and this is all moot. I still think Steph is I think the best bet is Steph to win it. Even though Draymond, I said, has been the most valuable, I think if it's close at all, Steph is going to get, I don't want to say sympathy, that sounds condescending, but Steph's going to get the Lifetime Achievement MVP award vote, which I think is totally understandable.
But also, Clay, we're not sure about yet. We don't know what's going on with KD. There's so much more game left in this series. Anything can happen. We're only 2 games in, but it just feels like so many moving parts. So this is
whoever has the best game number 3. Obviously, they're going to have an advantage in the series. But I believe between Kawhi and Draymond, whoever has a better game in their team wins. They're going to be the front runner.
All right, let's talk more about those Warriors and